in relation to new businesses, obtaining building permits, licensing, zoning permits. So far, the process of expanding businesses in Missoula has been severely hampered by poor service, lack of guidance, and negative customer service.
So our next step, and I don't know if you have had a chance to read the report. If you have not, it's available at our website. The Working Together report calls out a number of things that we could do better, largely based on best practices elsewhere in the state and nation. You know, our commitment is to again figure out a way to streamline our processes while again maintaining our standards. So our first step is we've got a meeting scheduled with commissioners who are our partners in much of this, and I'm very interested in understanding from them what they're willing to do in terms of moving forward. We'd like to look at some of the models that are out there, and in particular I'm interested in the notion of a one-stop shop. That is, whether you're getting a business license or thinking about a new piece of zoning or a subdivision, you have a point of entry, and we start to give you the help you need right away and guide you in the right direction. So there is no part of this that's easy, and there is no part of it that's simple. But I didn't sign on for easy or simple, despite the fact that I perhaps am both. And the easy isn't what you're thinking. You all took that trip, I did not.
And we have one on this side.
Mayor, I'm just going to make a quick comment. We're in the same boat as you over at the mall. We're waiting for that asphalt plant to open, believe me. The other question I had, is there any economic development nuggets that you could share with us today?
Well, yeah, never ask a politician to share nuggets. So our kickoff this morning, we've gone a long way toward creating an organization that I think is goal-oriented in terms of economic development. We're all about creating jobs at the partnership, and today the recruiting firm we hired about a month ago is sorting through a pretty big stack of resumes and applications, trying to find us an executive who can implement that plan. What we're hearing from those folks at Jorgensen and Associates is that Missoula is an extraordinarily attractive market. We present challenges and opportunities that folks with pretty credible resumes will find attractive, and that we have a real good shot at putting the plans on the ground. We hope to have somebody hired in that position by the end of March. Jorgensen's going to bring us 8 folks. We don't know who they are yet to talk with. And really that person, we've got a board of directors. We certainly have a vision. That vision is largely the product of our conversations with you all, with the community, and the business community in particular. The person who gets that job is going to be charged with the task of putting that plan on the ground. We're going to try not to saddle them with too many organizational encumbrances to start with. Individuals have individual styles and the ability to operate differently. So we'll see who we get and how he or she wants to organize. We're really poised to make the investment we need, fortunately, in putting the plan on the ground. I don't have anything else. Looking for a... I got nothing. But a bunch of other people do, fortunately.
This would be to John and Jean both. Good afternoon and thank you for your time. So the first question would be is, you talked about financing, I think both of you. So what do you predict will be the future revenue source for local government, and how do you see that impacting homeowners and businesses? The second part of the question is how can citizens and businesses meaningfully participate in prioritizing the programs that are provided and funded by local government? Thank you.
Our primary source of revenue doesn't change much. It's taxes and fees. What we hope to do, however, is grow the pie so that burden can be shared. And that's really what part of this economic development effort is all about. Gary Chumrock just left the building, but we spent a little time in his $15 million investment in downtown Missoula, which does nothing but help our tax base, strengthen that base and help us spread the burden around a little bit. There's not a lot of positive buzz around taxes and fees, oddly enough, but the fact of the matter is that I believe we continue to provide tremendous value for what we're asking as an investment from the folks we serve. I believe that we deliver those services more effectively and less expensively than the private sector could deliver those services. And that's sort of the fundamental tenet of what we do. And that's our pact, that's our agreement with one another, that's our belief that together we can aggregate our resources and we can get more done as a whole than as our parts. We need to continue, however, Nick, to look for other revenue opportunities. And some of those can be as simple as attracting new business. The other is looking to our state and federal partners to ensure that our investment as a community and the value that we bring to the state government and federal government is rewarded, that our piece of that is acknowledged, and that as we look at formula funding, for example, as we send money back to Missoula and Missoula County from the state based on economic activity that happens here, we need to not only defend, but I think enhance some of those formulas so that the economic drivers, the cities around Montana that are really shoring up the economy in between the booms and busts of resource extraction, that we're getting our fair share and that those efforts are acknowledged. I'm always looking for new revenue opportunities, and I get a mixed bag of them. One of the more frequent revenue opportunities that's suggested to me anonymously via email is that I quit or stop paying myself. That will only put a relatively small dent in the revenue, but it's out there. But I think there are also some creative ideas. Again, we're back in the position where we need to work together. You know, I think over time, whether it's impact fees or other licensing fees, I think we've done our best to reach out to make sure that we have folks at the table advising us and helping us figure out how to move forward with those sorts of revenue streams. So, long answer, sorry.
We do have one on this side.
Hold on, let Gene.
So as you know, the county government is actually an arm of the state government. So we do a lot of things for the state, and the way we're funded for that is through an entitlement bill, which is one of the things they're talking about right now. So it used to be that as you paid for the license for your car, for example, 10 cents went here, 12 cents went there. It was this convoluted formula. So through a lot of work and Missoula County was one of the big players in that work in the 2001 legislature, we managed to make that an easier formula. We now send money to the state, they send back our portion. So if you think about some of the things we do, you can buy your car plates here, that's really a state job. You can pay your taxes here, that's really a state job. When you eat in this facility, you hope that you assume that it's been inspected. That's the State Department, state's job, but we do it for them. So some of those things we choose right now to subsidize, one of which is restaurant inspections and grocery store inspections, because we believe it's important to our community. So those are we really get, it's taxes that you see, and we itemize our tax bill so you can see what percentage of your, everybody that calls us says they pay $2,000, so I assume you all do too. So you can see what percent of your $2,000 goes to what. Of course, a lot we collect money for the schools. We collect money for rural fire departments. We collect money for the city, actually, and give it to them across the road. But all those things are listed on there. So as you asked about prioritizing as we go through budgets, we have to look at what's important to our community. Well, we just learned from our surveys that parks and trails are important. Now, the city has a lot bigger park department and a more involved as to all the things you can do than the county. We have one person, Lisa, and so we do less. But we also know that the values of this community mean that we take care of our kids, we take care of our people with special needs, and we take care of our seniors. We know some of those things because you have voted in those levies to do some of that stuff. You vote for the library levy, you voted for open space, you voted for seniors, you voted for museums. Those are things that are important to the people in our community, and that's, so, you know, the voted levies, we don't mess with much. Now, we do have the ability to say, well, this year we're just not going to levy money for one of those things. But we believe that the community's told us it's important, so we will continue to do that. You pay for roads and bridges. If you live in the county, it's people who live outside the city limits pay for road and bridge outside the city limits, separate from the folks in the city don't pay for the rural road. So, you know, we'll have to look at all of those things, but we'll also have to keep in mind that it isn't always just the people who show up at something like this, who show up at a budget hearing, or the people that come in and want some permit and think we're too darn slow and bang their hand on the counter. That's not the only people that we serve. We serve the people that don't have a strong voice. We serve the people that don't have a car and can't get there. And so we have to weigh it all. But we hope you'll help us to prioritize that. And this is a generous community, and I think that we'll all figure out a way to take care of our people even in tough times.
Hi everyone, I'm Ruth Blink. I'm with the Missoula Organization of Realtors. First of all, thank you to both of you for being here today and talking with us. My question is in relation to something that Jean said, but Mary, you feel welcome to answer it as well if you feel like it. But you recognize that development in our community is a big resource for you, not only for your incomes, but also for jobs in the community and that sort of thing. So obviously right now we're experiencing a bit of a lull, but what is the county, and of course potentially the city, doing to help transition into a smoother operating system, I guess, for new development as it comes in, to kind of help booster that and make sure that it remains healthy when it does come back? And also then related to workforce housing, how are we ensuring that regulations are not actually making it more difficult to provide workforce housing in the future?
So the county right now is in the process of holding some listening sessions. I know that some of you in the development area have been invited to those listening sessions. And the reason we're focusing first on those of you who work in that field is to hear, you know, what is it that's in our regulation that you see as an impediment? Does it mean because it's not clear? Does it mean, you know, is the impediment that we require too much, it takes too long, whatever. But just realize that sometimes if you had, there were 5 people, and this used to happen. Commissioners hardly see a subdivision right now. We used to do 3 a week. So if you brought in your subdivision, there was probably 3 other people that did it at the same time, and you can't expect the same staff to do all that. So we have to be realistic about things. But I guess what we also have to weigh is whether, still to protect those people that aren't there. In other words, just because you have 100 acres and technically by law you can have one house on 1 acre, doesn't mean that your property is best suited for that. What I say sometimes is, it might be a good place for a subdivision, but this subdivision is not the right subdivision for this place. So, you know, be realistic in what you're talking about. Is there a creek you need to protect? Is there water there? All those things. You don't want somebody's septic running into your well. So, take part in those listening sessions. From the listening sessions, we'll be looking at then what's identified as to what we go forward and do to improve our subdivision there. One of the things we think will come out of that is that we will have different road standards for how rural you are. For example, we have great road standards, but some of our roads that are in Condon or up 9 Mile that were from a subdivision that met our subdivision standards could handle more traffic than a street in town. Probably doesn't need to be that way. So those are some of the ways to be involved and let us know what's going on. Just remember, we're to look at public health, safety, and welfare of everybody, not just the guy that wants to develop his property or gal. The other is sometimes people come in and say, well, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why in the heck would I have to go through any kind of review just to put a house out back for grandma? Well, I can tell you that once grandma's gone, that somebody's going to come in and want to buy that. And they're going to want to divide it. And that is why we've always reviewed subdivisions for lease or rent to see what the impact might be in the future if the property was divided. But maybe you should look at it from what would I think if it was a neighbor doing it? Do we want if you pick any subdivision in the county and say, do we want the density in that place to double without any review? Probably not. So just help us to be realistic about what should we review. You know, let's have a good conversation. As to the workforce part of it, again, we need to look at why regulations are there and what they're there to protect. And hopefully we can go forward.
Bill? Hi, Bob Jaffe with the City Council. I have a question for John. Gene spoke about the lag time between the slowdown and tax revenue. And I was wondering, a lot of the things you spoke about as far as economic development and the different revenue sources seem like things that are a little bit more long-term. But I was wondering if we have projections yet as far as if the city is going to run into some of those same problems that Gene described in the near term.
Our sense of things, Bob, is that we've already experienced them and that we're more or less over the hump, especially in terms of tax base. I think county's experiencing some additional difficulties because of some significant loss in tax base. The budget I'll bring you for fiscal year 2012 will be predicated on the notion that I don't think unlike the last 2 fiscal years we've had to bring significant cuts. I think we're pretty stable. We actually had growth revenue last year that was, as you may recall, far better than we had expected. All things being equal, we expect that to be the same again for fiscal year 2012 or a little bit better. Much of that has to do with centrally assessed, but it's also new facilities coming on the tax rolls. We've had a couple of years of our building permits aren't at all-time highs, but they're certainly much better than they have been. And in fiscal year 2010 in particular, we had a pretty good year and a pretty good uptick. So we actually think we're over some of the hump that Missoula County is kind of finding itself. I mean, it's all about cycles, and I think they're experiencing a slightly different spot in the cycle.
My name's Karen Harris, and I work for MDSC, a local nonprofit, employing about 180 people, so a lot of jobs. And we rely very heavily on state funding to take care of our adults with developmental disabilities. We have a lobbyist as well representing a variety of similar industries. What is the perception you're hearing from your lobbyist, John McDonald, coming from the state back to the city and county right now?
We're hearing it's all sweetness and light, Karen. Someone actually spotted a unicorn in the Capitol the other day. You know, it's a pretty bumpy deal. Our strategy, for better or worse, is largely defensive. We're interested in hanging on to the resources that we have, because the fact of the matter is, like it or not, if our funding mechanism changes for the worse, that burden falls on all of us, right? We either stop serving or we charge you more. So everybody in the room has a piece of that. You all can have a conversation with the folks who serve you in Helena to remind them that just simply shifting taxes, because it makes a bunch of rhetorical sense, doesn't make a lot of fiscal sense. And you know, the pendulum swings, and it's a difficult time. I again have faith in the notion that over the long term, cooler heads will prevail. There are good Republicans and there are good Democrats, and when they find ways to work together, to meet in the middle, and to acknowledge their responsibility to our collective well-being, we get good stuff done.